everybody. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a stamp, a styrofoam stamp that you can do something called printmaking with. Printmaking is when we use a surface and we create a design on it that we can make copies of it, and each copy is a print. There's different types of printmaking because there's different surfaces you can use. For this one we're going to be using styrofoam. So styrofoam is found in things we use around the house. Styrofoam plates, the type of trays you get at the grocery store that might have like meat or cheese on them, the deli trays, are usually made out of styrofoam. And then there's always takeout containers as well that you could use the lid. But you want to make sure it's kind of flat and smooth. You don't want any writing on it. I would want to avoid like this bumpy part here where this was stamped, because that would kind of mess up what I'm trying to do. My favorite thing to work on is the styrofoam plate, just because it's smooth. Typically there's not usually any marks on it, and these are just something I have at home. So when you get started, you are going to need to make sure you have a piece of styrofoam. I'm going to be doing this with index cards. You need to find basically a piece of paper that will fit on the plate, or even more than one paper. You could use Post-it notes. They tend to be colored though. I prefer to work on a white paper, but Post-it notes would work. You could also probably cut pieces of paper down to a size that you want. So maybe you want it to be like 3 by 3 inches. That's a Post-it. 4 by 4 inches. You could trim paper to that size. So index cards work great. They fit. They're really kind of like a sturdier paper, so they're easy to do this on. So that's what I'll be using. All right. When you get started, first thing to get ready is you are going to be doing the shape of the the shape of the index card on the styrofoam, and you'll need to use either a pen or a Sharpie for this part. And either one works. It doesn't really matter which one you use. They both kind of push in on the styrofoam. The way the design shows up is by pushing the styrofoam in on the lines. So you can use either. But you're just going to want to very carefully trace the shape of your paper on the plate. Alright, so that gets that ready. The next thing is we're going to be looking at an artist named Romero Britto, and he creates art, and a lot of the focus of his art is on things that make people happy. So he actually made this book called Happy, and one of the features of his art is that they're very brightly colored. They use a lot of pattern, and you will find the heart a lot in his artwork. Many of his artworks include the heart. You can see it here. It is a lot of times found on faces. So it's kind of like an adventure. There's a heart in that one. I mean, you can see even a heart pattern. So we are going to create a heart today, and I'm going to show you how to draw a heart. When you get started, you are going to make your heart by using dots, and then we're going to connect the dots. So you can do it either way. You can see I did kind of a tall heart in this one, and you can draw more than one heart. I could put 2 in here if I wanted. But to do this, we're going to use dots. So I'm going to put one dot kind of near the bottom of my picture space, and I'm going to go right up above it, not all the way up though. I'm going to put another dot, and then I'm going to put a dot maybe 2 fingers away over here, and about 2 fingers away over here. Kind of looks like it might make a letter T. Now from the first dot to the second dot, I'm actually going to connect those with a bump or a rainbow line. I'm going to do that again from the second down to the third. That makes the top of my heart. Then I'm going to go and connect those dots down to the bottom one. Now if you're drawing with a pen, make sure you're not pressing too hard. If you feel like the styrofoam is ripping while you do this, then you're probably pressing too hard. The Sharpie doesn't really rip it as much because it has a softer tip. Alright, so now that I've got my heart, if I want to add another one in, I can do that. But we're going to add in some lines to kind of divide our picture into different spaces where we can do different patterns and colors. So I like to make some of my lines go kind of across the picture, and they can wave, they could curve, they can go from the top to the bottom. Try to avoid making too many of those really tiny spaces because they're kind of hard to color. They could also all come out from the same point. So I could do it from there and kind of work my way up to different directions. But I wouldn't use more than 5 lines. If you start using too many lines, it gets really hard to color your picture. All right, so once you've done that, then you need to get your washable markers out. I'm using Crayola washable ones here. You do not want to use permanent markers for this part. And you're gonna choose either a color or a pattern for each space. So you could simply color the space and try to use the side of the marker and be gentle when you're coloring. I mean, you can color a space with a color, and it's okay if it doesn't quite stay inside the lines. It'll still work. The lines will show up no matter what because you pushed them in with the pen. You can also do different kinds of patterns. Remember, Britto likes to use polka dots and stripes and swirls. He's got a signature pattern. I like to call that one confetti, little lines and dots, or kind of like a sprinkle pattern. So you can add some of those different patterns in as well. And you can do the pattern with just one color. So I could do a polka dot pattern like this with just one color. You could also do a pattern with 2 colors. So I could do like a stripes pattern. Maybe I'll do that over here. So I'm gonna gently add stripes. And then I left a space, obviously, in between the stripes. And so in that space, I could add a second color. So you can do a 2-color pattern. Now, you can use the same color more than once. I would just avoid putting it in spaces next to each other. So if I like this blue, maybe I choose to come over here and use it here. All right, so you're working through inside and outside the heart. You want to have color and pattern in all those different spaces, not just inside the heart. You don't need to color outside the rectangle shape or the paper shape that you made though, because that's not going to show up on your paper. So, all right, now once you have added something to every space, you are going to be getting your paper that you're putting this on wet. So if you have baby wipes at home, those work really well for this. Otherwise, a wet paper towel will work well, but you definitely are going to have to just sort of figure out how much water you can get on the paper towel. If you've got water dripping out of it, then it's just gonna make a big old mess. There's too much water in that paper towel. So if you're gonna use a paper towel, you're gonna wanna squeeze most of the water out so it's just a damp paper towel and not like a super drippy paper towel. All right, so this is my last space here. Okay, so there we go. So now I've got my paper ready to go, and I've got actually a baby wipe here I'm using. A lot of times the baby wipes can be just a tad bit too dry, so it helps to put a little bit of extra water on it, or the other option is to drip some water on the paper and then use the baby wipe to spread it out. So you could just dip your finger in a bowl of water and kind of add some drips, or if you have like a little spray bottle, like a spritz bottle, you can spritz it and then kind of spread out that water with the baby wipe. Now, a lot of times, the first time someone tries this, they find that the paper was too dry. So, I'm going to press the wet side down. Once it's down, I can't move it. If it slides, it's going to smear. So I got to use both hands. One hand holds, the other hand rubs, then I switch. So I stop and I do the other hand. And this might be a good place to ask for an adult to help. They can help kind of hold it. I do this a lot. You can hold the corners and then you can rub it in the middle while someone's holding the corners for you so it doesn't move. Now, when you lift it up, you might have a wonderful print of your stamp, or you might find out it didn't really show up at all. If it didn't show up at all and all the marker's still on the styrofoam, then just get the paper wet again and put it back down and try to make sure the paper is a little bit more wet the second time. If there's just certain sections that didn't show up, like over here, this didn't show up at all, well, I must not have gotten that spot wet enough. So what I can do is, I'm gonna put a little water here on my baby wipe, And then I'm gonna just press that baby wipe down where it didn't show up at all. And I'm gonna line it back up and just rub that spot. And then I can get that spot that's missing to show up. Same thing up here. This didn't show up very well. Well, I'll just add a little extra water, line it up again, and rub that spot. So you can kind of fix it as you go if it didn't show up, parts of it didn't show up. You might even find that there's enough marker on there that if you got another one wet, sometimes you can make a second copy without even recoloring it. So you could try it again to see if you can get a second, or you can always recolor it. So I could try this one more time and see. It'd probably be a lot lighter because some of the markers are already gone, but I may still get a second copy this way. So see, I got a second copy. It's lighter than the first, but it still works. So then you can use a paper towel or a wipey, and you can actually clean this off. And you can recolor it as many times as you want. So you can make 4 or 5 copies of these, kind of like pop art, where you have multiple copies of the same thing. So that's how you do your heart stamp. I hope you guys have fun.